So, this article is fascinating. It paints a picture of a very deliberate and strategic effort by the Center for Christian Virtue to expand its influence in Ohio and beyond.
That's right. They've been very successful in leveraging school choice policies to benefit their network of religious schools.
It's also worth noting that this isn't just happening in Ohio. School choice programs are expanding across the country, and religious groups are increasingly involved in these efforts. This is a national trend, and it's one that has significant implications for the future of education in the United States.
You're right. This is a national issue, and it's one that we need to pay close attention to. The Center for Christian Virtue's success in Ohio is a warning sign of what could happen elsewhere. We need to be vigilant in defending the separation of church and state and ensuring that all students have access to a quality education, regardless of their beliefs.
I think it's important to remember that this isn't just about education. It's about the very fabric of our society. The Center for Christian Virtue's actions are part of a broader effort to reshape American culture in their image. They're trying to create a society where their values are dominant, and that's a dangerous trend.
You're absolutely right. This is about more than just schools. It's about power, influence, and the future of our democracy. We need to be aware of the forces at play and be prepared to defend our values.
So what can we do? How can we push back against this trend?
That's a good question. I think it's important to raise awareness about what's happening, to educate people about the implications of these policies, and to support organizations that are working to defend the separation of church and state. We also need to hold our elected officials accountable and demand that they uphold the principles of our democracy.
It's a long fight, but it's one that's worth fighting. The future of our society depends on it.
I agree. We need to be vigilant and proactive in defending our values. The stakes are high, but I believe that we can win this fight.
It's interesting how they've managed to frame this as a matter of parental choice, while simultaneously pushing for direct government funding of religious schools. It seems like a contradiction.
It is a contradiction, and it's one that's been at the heart of the school choice debate for decades. The argument is that parents should have the freedom to choose the best education for their children, but the reality is that the government is ultimately deciding which schools get funded.
And the Center for Christian Virtue is clearly using this debate to advance its own agenda. They're not just advocating for school choice, they're advocating for a specific kind of education, one that's rooted in Christian values.
Absolutely. They've been very vocal about their opposition to what they see as leftist indoctrination in public schools, and they're using school choice as a way to create a parallel system of education that aligns with their beliefs.
It's a bit concerning, isn't it? The idea that a religious group can use taxpayer money to promote its own ideology in schools.
It is concerning, especially when you consider the potential for discrimination and exclusion. What happens to students who don't share the same beliefs? What about the separation of church and state?
That's a very important point. The separation of church and state is a fundamental principle of American democracy, and it's one that's being challenged by this movement. It's not just about religious freedom, it's about the freedom of all citizens to live in a society where the government doesn't endorse any particular religion.
Exactly. And the Center for Christian Virtue's actions are a clear example of how this principle is being eroded. They're using the government to promote their own religious agenda, and that's a dangerous precedent.